Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sthapitam yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavam Sham Shri Radha Krishna Pada Sagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Pada Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitam Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityanamine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshtarini Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyeva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaurabhaktavrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. I welcome all of you for this Tuesday satsang program on Bhagavad Gita. Baldevan Prabhu has beautifully explained verse 7.1 in the last meeting that we had. But just to streamline our thoughts, I thought I will just go through 7.1 again, so that it is in the same section 1 of chapter 7, so that we revive our understanding of 7.1. So the theme of 7.1 is to always think of Krishna in devotion. One must hear about Krishna and his supreme position. Now Krishna himself says, hear from me in this chapter, and you will know how to know me in full. So he says, hear from me and practice Bhakti Yoga with the mind attached to me in full conscious of me. So this is what he says in the beginning. Krishna begins by saying, Maya Sakta Mana, with mind attached to me. And then he says, Yogam Yunjan Madashraya, by practicing yoga in full consciousness of me. Asamshayam Samagram, Mam Yatha Jnasasi. You can know me completely without a doubt. How do you do this? He says simply Tashruno, simply by hearing from me. So hearing from Krishna or hearing about him from authorized sources develops the full faith described in verse 6.47, the last verse of chapter 6. Hearing about Krishna is essential to fix one's full consciousness upon him. Krishna tells Arjuna, just hear, because knowledge of him is beyond the three modes of material nature and is inaccessible through ordinary means. So by concentrating one's mind upon Krishna, one is able to know the absolute truth completely. But not otherwise. Impersonal Brahman, Brahma Jyoti, or localized Paramatma realization is not the perfect knowledge of the absolute truth, because it is partial. By practice of Krishna consciousness, one can know everything in full, namely the absolute truth, the living entities, the material nature, and their manifestations. Concentration of the mind upon Krishna, the Supreme, is made possible by prescribed devotional service in 9 different forms, of which Shravanam is the first and the most important. But one has to learn from Krishna directly or from a pure devotee of Krishna and not from a non-devotee scholar. This is very important. In his purport towards 7.1, Srila Prabhupada quotes the famous supporting verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, 1.2, 17:21. Starting from Shranvatam Swakrishna, Swakatha Krishna. These verses explain that Bhakti begins when we hear about Krishna. It gives various steps for advancement in Bhakti before coming to the stage of Asamshayam Samagram, complete understanding of the Supreme Absolute Truth, without a doubt. So Bhagavad Gita is like a sandwich. The first and the last layers of the sandwich are that of bread, and in between is the stuffing. So chapter 1 to 6 is the first layer of bread. Chapter 7 to 12 is the stuffing. And again, chapter 13 to 18 is the layer of bread. So we have already bitten into the first layer of the sandwich, that is chapter 1 to 6. The real taste starts now when we bite into the stuffing, which we are about to do now. Chapter 1 to 6 deals with the karma, jnana, and ashtanga yogas, where the living entity has been described as a non-material spirit soul, capable and trying to elevate himself to self-realization by different types of yogas and with his own efforts. That's called Aroha method, Aroha Pantha. In those 6 chapters, an effort to realize God as God is seen as a subject matter. It deals mostly with the liberation. भगवान से प्रेम की बात अब तक नहीं हुआ है. In this, it has not come in the first 6 chapters. So it is compared to biting into the bread, which is not all that tasty. So at the end of the 6th chapter, it has been clearly stated that the steady concentration of the mind upon Krishna, or in other words, Krishna consciousness, is the highest form of all yogas. Who is that devotee? How can we know him? Krishna says, don't worry. I myself will explain. Then he starts saying, Maya Sakta Mana, the attached mind to me, attached to me. Then he says, Yoga Minjan, Madashraya, by practicing yoga in full consciousness of me. Asamshayam samagram, Mam Yatha Jnasasi. You can know me completely, without a doubt. How do you do that? This is just touch, simply hearing from him. So what is the difference between Bhakti Yoga and other forms of yoga? In other forms of yoga, the sadhaka is fully dependent on his own efforts. He says, I will do this, I will do that, to ultimately come to you. From karma to jnana, by acquiring knowledge. From jnana to Ashtanga yoga, by engaging in meditation, etc. So this is, as we discussed already, is the Aroha Pantha. But in Bhakti Yoga, the process is to take shelter of the Supreme. If I compare my capacity to his capacity, whose capacity is more? Obviously, that of the Supreme Lord is more. So Madashraya is the soul of Bhakti. I keep saying, I'm full of defects. Please help me to reach you. This is the Avaroha Pantha. We seek Krishna's help, and we simply execute the process given to us and depend on his capacity. It is very much logical to depend on the will and mercy of Krishna. Because on our own effort, nothing much can be achieved. If you are taking his ashraya, his help, then he will help you. We have to only request and say, I am full of defects. Please help me. I want to come near you. So even the karmis and the Ashtanga yogis cannot attain liberation until there is an element of bhakti, a tinge of bhakti. Though prominently it is their effort, their endeavors in bhakti. Their endeavors in bhakti is not a major component. It's their effort, self-effort. But in Bhakti Yoga, it's different. Bhakti is the major component. जब तक हम एक प्रामाणिक मार्ग से, एक प्रामाणिक व्यक्ति से भगवान के संदेश को सुनते नहीं हैं, तब तक हमारा हृदय संपूर्ण रूप से परिवर्तन नहीं होगा, भक्ति से आसक्त नहीं होगा. It's a step and everything is imbued in it. अपने ढंग से हम भक्ति नहीं कर सकते. इसका एक प्रोसेस होता है और वो प्रोसेस है वो एक प्रामाणिक व्यक्ति से भक्ति के बारे में सुनना. इसलिए कृष्ण बोलते हैं अर्जुन को, जो मैं बोलता हूं उसको ध्यान से सुनो. So this is what Balram Prabhu had described in the last session. So we now go from 7.2 onwards. That is today's topic of discussion. So the verse goes like this. Jnanam te aham sa vijnanam idam vakshami asheshataha yajñatva neha bhuyo anyash jnatavyam avashishyate. Anybody would like to try to recite this shloka?
Jnanam teham savijnanam idam vakshamya asheshataha yajnatva neha bhuyonyam jnatva tavyam avashishyate.
Good. Anybody else?
Shall I? Hare Krishna.
Yes, please, Mata.
Jnanam teham savijnanam idam vakshamya sheshatah yajñatva ne.
It seems you got disconnected. Mataji, anybody else? Mataji probably has some problem.
Jnanam teham sa vijnanam idam vakshamyase sataha yajnatva neha bhuyo jnatva yam avashishyate.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah, please.
Jnanam teham savijnanam idam vakshamya sheshataha yajñatva neha bhuyonya jnatavyam avashishyate.
Okay, so we go word by word. Jnanam, phenomenal knowledge. Te, unto you. Aham, I. Sa, with. Vijnanam, numinous knowledge. Idam, this. Vakshami, shall explain. Asheshataha, in full. Yat, which. Jnatva, knowing na. Knowing, na means not. Iha, in this world. Bhuyaha, further. Anyat, anything more. Jnatavyam, knowable. Avashishyate, remains. I shall now declare unto you in full this knowledge, both phenomenal and numinous. This being known, nothing further shall remain for you to know. So, we will not read the purport. So, Krishna continues on the same theme. He says, the knowledge that I am going to impart to you, if you are able to understand, you do not have to understand anything else. We can imagine when Krishna himself says this, how important knowledge could be. Srila Prabhupada says, to know matter, spirit, and the source of both is complete knowledge or transcendental knowledge. Arjuna being Lord's devotee and friend, and since complete knowledge can be achieved only by devotees of the Lord in disciplic succession, directly from the Lord, Arjuna was eligible to receive this knowledge. When one knows who is the source of all knowledge and cause of all causes, and the only object of meditation of all yogis, then all knowable becomes known and nothing remains unknown. So if you know Krishna, you know everything. So Krishna here glorifies knowledge about himself. Jnana generally refers to knowing that the body and soul are different. generally. However, here, jnana refers to knowledge of Krishna and his energies according to Srila Prabhupada. So, Srila Prabhupada translates Vijnana as numinous or spiritual knowledge, whereas Srila Ramanujacharya comments that Vijnana refers to knowledge of Krishna's form, which of course is spiritual. Similarly, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakura says, Jnana means powers, meaning Krishna's energies, both material and spiritual. And Vijnana means Krishna's sweetness. So you see, Jnana and Vijnana. Jnana is the knowledge of the power or energies of the Lord. But how does that power get translated into a devotee's life? For a devotee, that power doesn't remain power or a power source. That translates into sweetness, Vijnana. Jnana is the power of Krishna, and Vijnana is how that power translates into sweetness of Krishna's sweetness in Krishna's devotee's life. Krishna is not a Shakti, he is a Shaktiman. More than the Shakti, Krishna is a Vyakti, is a person. And as a person, we have our likes and dislikes. We love some selected people and we do not love some. These qualities we have because Krishna has those qualities in him. In the same way, though Lord knows everything, every living being, and generally loves them, very few selected beings are very dear to him. So by means of Bhagavad Gita, he is telling us how we can love him. Isn't it very magnanimous and glorious? He is the controller of all universes and also of the spiritual world, which is 3 times bigger than this material world. Still, he personally comes and gives this knowledge to us. For 45 minutes, he spoke Bhagavad Gita in the battlefield of Kurukshetra to give us this knowledge, who we are, what is our relationship with him, and how we can love him. 45 minutes of Supreme Lord's time, imagine how valuable it is. If he can give 45 minutes of his valuable time to us, can we not give one life, this one life of ours to his service? Srila Prabhupada has said it many times. You have given so many lifetimes to Maya. Give this one lifetime to in Krishna's service. So Krishna attaches huge importance to these 6 chapters, 7 to 12. When he says, Jnanam te aham savijnanam idam vakshami asheshataha. Asheshataha means without any shesha, completely. कुछ बचा नहीं रहेगा. यज्ञात्वा नेह भूयो अन्याच ज्ञातव्यम अवशिष्यते. यहाँ पे भी कुछ जाने लायक नहीं रहेगा, वहां पे भी कुछ जाने लायक नहीं रहेगा. वहां मीन्स in the spiritual world. Living entities operate on 2 counts. One is the physical material nature, the phenomenal world, under whose shelter we live, and the other is the spiritual world, where we ultimately aspire to reach to. So this is 7.2. So we go to 7.3. Hope you are with me. Any questions on 7.2? If none, we proceed to 7.3. 7.3 is a very important shloka. Manushyanam sahasreshu kaschid yatati siddhaye yatatam api siddhanam kaschin mam vetti tatpataha. Would you like to try reciting?
Manushyanam sahasreshu kaschit yatati siddhaye yatatam api siddhanam kaschin mam vetti tattvataha.
मनुष्याणां सहस्रेषु कश्चिद्यतति सिद्धये यततामपि सिद्धानां कश्चिन्मां वेत्ति तत्त्वतः.
मनुष्याणां सहस्रेषु कच्चिद् यतति सिद्धये यततामपि सिद्धानां कच्चिन्मां वेत्ति तत्त्वतः.
Okay. So we proceed to word meaning. Manushyanam, of men, sahasreshu, out of many thousands. Kaschit, someone. Yatati, endeavors. Siddhaye, for perfection. Yatatam, of those so endeavoring. Api, indeed. Siddhanam, of those who have achieved perfection. Kaschit, someone. Mam, me. Vetti, does know. Tattvataha, in fact. Out of many thousands among men, one may endeavor for perfection. And of those who have achieved perfection, hardly one knows me in truth. So the theme of this verse is rarity of knowledge. Here Krishna says, who is qualified to receive this knowledge? Out of many thousands, one may endeavor for perfection. And those who achieved perfection, one may know me in truth, tattvataha. In one sense, bhakti is easy because it requires no material qualification. But in another sense, however, bhakti is very different. It's very difficult to perfect because it is obtainable only by those who engage in selfless devotion and not by any material formula or mental speculation or ritual. What is a ritual? Ritual done as a prayaschitta or atonement does not give rise to bhakti. It is only a karma kanda means to escape oneself from the reactions of sinful activities already committed. The propensity to commit sinful activity remains with that person. So he cannot therefore become a bhakta by performing the ritual. So Srila Prabhupada says here that generally mankind is simply engaged in animal propensities, namely eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. And hardly anyone is interested in acquiring knowledge, transcendent knowledge, to try to know what is self, what the body is, and what the absolute truth is. The first 6 chapters of the Gita are meant for those who are interested in transcendental knowledge, in understanding the self, the super self, And the process of realization by Jnana Yoga, Dhyana Yoga, and discrimination of the self from the matter. So three aspects. They may achieve impersonal realization, Brahman realization, that is Brahman and Paramatma, but not Krishna, the absolute truth, who is beyond the knowledge of Brahman and Paramatma. Achieving impersonal Brahman realization may be easier than understanding Krishna. So who can know him? Only pure devotees who practice devotional service to the Lord can know him, because he is benevolently inclined to his devotees. Lord is inclined towards his devotees. He therefore reveals himself to devotees. But can they know him fully? No. Only something of the inconceivable transcendental qualities one can know. Then what is the process to know him? Devotional service to Krishna is the only process and is the last word in Brahman realization. What about impersonalists, Paramatma realized yogis, and demigods? They also fail to understand Krishna as the son of Yashoda, the personal aspect, and as the supreme personality of Godhead. Thus, Srila Prabhupada highlights the potency of bhakti here. A rarity of true knower is explained in this verse. And in verse 7.19, Bahunam Janmanam Ante. And also in verse 7.26, Vedaham Samataitani. After many births, one gets Vasudeva realization. So what 7. In this verse we have seen 7.19. 7.19 says, Bahunam Janmanamante, Jnanavan Mam Prapadyante, Vasudeva Sarvamiti, Natsa Mahatma Sadurlabha. After many births and deaths, he who is actually in knowledge surrenders unto me, knowing me to be the cause of all causes and all that is. Such a soul is very rare. And 7.26, 7.26 says, O Arjuna, as a supreme personality of Godhead, I know everything that has happened in the past, all that is happening in the present, and all things that are yet to come. I also know all living entities. Me, no one knows. So that is how the rarity of a true knower is explained in Bhagavad Gita. So as I said, after many births, one gets Vasudeva realization. One cannot know Krishna as he is, Tattvataha, even by great scholar or philosopher. Even the great demigods are sometimes confused about Krishna. Krishna says, no one knows me as I am. And if one does know me, then such great soul is very rare. So in the first verse of this chapter, Krishna says, Arjuna, now here, I will give you that knowledge by which you can know me in full. In the second verse, he tells what to hear and then says, once you know this, you do not have to know anything else. But in the third verse, he says, that is this verse, he says, people do not have to have a desire to come to me. इस बाजार में बहुत ज़्यादा खरीदार नहीं है. Srila Prabhupada says, Krishna consciousness is like a diamond. In the vegetable market, vendors will have hundreds of consumers every day, customers every day. But in the diamond market, when you go, you hardly see any customer for days together. If one has to buy a diamond necklace, he has to pay a good price. Therefore, he has to be a rich person. Similarly, knowing Krishna or endeavoring to know him, giving up one's ego, envy, lust, anger, or having a desire to give them up is very difficult. And therefore, rarely we find people interested in it. Everybody in this material world come with Maya or Mera consciousness. That is, by default, the factory setting with which the material nature gives birth to living entities. That is the way the living entities are born, the factory setting. The mass of people are interested in animalistic propensities. With this state of mind, it is not his cup of tea to endeavor for Krishna. To taste the real taste of honey, one has to endeavor. There will be some bee bites, whatever precaution you take, but one has to tolerate it. So here in this verse, Krishna is actually revealing who is qualified to know about him. If you consider the entire population of living entities, there are infinite numbers of living entities. Most fortunate ones are the human beings. Even amongst human beings, there are two categories, civilized and uncivilized. Amongst the civilized, there are few people who are inclined to practice bhakti. Even among those who are inclined, quite a good number of them will fall out because of lack of determination. Of the remaining who are determined and who march towards the ultimate goal, when it comes to perfection, the jnanis and Ashtanga yogis, for them perfection means attainment of Brahmajyoti and Paramatma within their heart. So thus they fall out midway. So Krishna says, hardly one knows me in truth. So this is what he means when he says, hardly one knows me in truth. Because many people are not able to reach to him. So to know Krishna, one should be practicing bhakti. What is the basic aspect of Lord Krishna? Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha. Anadir Adir Govinda Sarva Karana Karana. He is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is Krishna. To know him, we have the path of Bhakti Yoga. The Jnanis and Ashtanga Yogis think that practicing Bhakti is very easy. But there is no thrill in it, so they don't practice. So Srila Prabhupada asked them a question. If practicing Bhakti is so easy, why do they not come to Bhakti and attain the absolute truth instead of settling for something lower? Why do they fall out halfway through? Bhakti is simple but not easy. One has to follow the scriptures under the guidance of a spiritual master in proper parampara, the lot of determination. So this is very rare. That is why Very rarely people can know Krishna. Only pure devotees who are hankering to know and attain Krishna, and not a great scholar or philosopher. Only those devotees who are hankering to know and attain Krishna can be successful in their endeavors. If you want to know Krishna, we should ask, who are you? Krishna will reveal himself to us in our hearts if he is pleased with the devotional service. Not by speculation. Every day when we chant our rounds, read scriptures, offer bhoga and other devotional services, our mood should be to please Krishna. Here Krishna is saying it is difficult to know him, but Krishna is so merciful. And if we aim at the goal and keep praying to him, it will happen. So this kind of confidence we must have. The soul of bhakti, as we said earlier, is the ashraya. One takes shelter of Krishna. इसलिए भक्ति को सर्वोत्तम योग कहा गया है. Only in bhakti, the ways and means are the same, unlike in all other processes, where the ways and means are different. One does bhakti in Goloka Vrindavan in the same way as he does here. The position of Krishna is, he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the cause of all causes. Sripada Shankaracharya also knew this, and he admits, but his followers do not accept. From the next shloka onwards, he is going to speak about himself, his various energies, both material and spiritual. Since that comes in a separate section and starts from 7.4 and goes up to 7.12. There are 9 verses. And next section is knowing Krishna's material and spiritual energies. I think we stop here and we take up the next section in the next meeting. Hare Krishna. Are there any questions?